Hello again. Hello again. I'm Barry James. I am delighted to be with Dr. Angela Cotellessa right now. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Barry. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you.
And likewise. And, you know, I mean, it's intrinsic to what we're going to be talking about today, which is something really exciting, a new catalyzer called Global Impact Quest, which is coming out of all the work we've been doing together, but is we think much needed. You heard it here first. You'll hear more about this, I'm sure, going down the line, and a really exciting um, first step. But we'll come to that in a moment or two. But um, uh, Angela, you and I have kind of got together, working together, and with some other people too, in the context of polymathy and the nascent. We're leaking a lot today, aren't we? A lot of the really interesting stuff. The nascent Modern Polymaths Institute. Angela is, of course, I like to call her the queen of polymaths place. I don't know whether that's going to stick, but I'll try and make it stick. But she's certainly in many ways the queen of modern polymathy, having laid the intellectual and academic foundations for that. Thank you for doing that, by the way. We'll talk about that in more detail another day. But Angela, would you mind just introducing yourself a bit more, just for anyone watching, a little bit about your history, and your incarceration, particularly that part of it. Viewers will find out what I mean by that in a moment or two, no doubt.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. I've got a bunch of degrees, bachelor's, master's, doctorate in human and organizational learning. And like Barry said, I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the lived experiences of modern day polymaths. I'm super passionate about supporting polymaths in the world. It's my opinion that narrow specialization, putting blinders on, thinking narrowly, quite literally, uh, has been quite destructive in some ways. It's been very useful in other ways. But, for most of human history, we were broad-minded, versatile, capable, multi-skilled individuals. And then 150, 200 years ago, something like that, we decided to specialize. And now here we are in 2024, and we have global warming, we have rampant poverty, we have broken criminal justice systems, poorly performing schools. So specialization hasn't really been able to solve the problems of our time. I come from government, by the way. I spent 15 years working in the federal government at some pretty cool places. I had been a White House intern. Before that, I had been a governor's office intern in California. And so I've worked in the belly of the beast. I had a cool experience working under Presidents Bush and Obama, and I spent nearly a decade managing training programs for leaders from across the federal government. And so I've had some cool vantage points. I also study, in addition to studying polymathy, I've really taken a hard look at the criminal justice system in the United States. I'm really interested. At the bottom line, if I had to summarize, like, what am I here for? What am I doing? What am I about? I want to use my life for good. I've always wanted to. It's just been a matter of finding the right way. And the lenses through which I do it nowadays are I try to promote human thriving through the lens of polymathy. It's really about human potential, human learning, human capacity, human versatility, really. And I also do what I can to reduce human suffering. A lot of my effort on that has, like I said, has been involved with criminal justice reforms in this country. But and here's the cool thing, because I'm in the polymathy space, I have met cool people like you, Barry. I have met cool people like Mark Fisher, some of the strongest polymaths living today, in my view. And so I've gotten also pulled into some world-changing projects that I can't even believe I'm in the room for, but I'm
Well,
so excited about.
let's comment onto that in a moment or two, because I just want to ask you a quick question. You spent, I think it was about 7 years in the office of the president. Uh, uh,
6 years, but yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
thereabouts. partly during George W. Bush's time,
Yep.
and through Obama's administration. What's your strongest or best memory or incident or most interesting incident from that time? I've never asked you this question before.
Oh God, there's
Uh,
so many stories.
just pick one. You can pick two
Oh,
if you want.
okay. I've met George Bush the most of all of them. I've met Biden a number of times. I've seen Obama and interacted with him a number of times. I got some cool gigs. Like I was in the inaugural box for Obama's second inaugural parade. Like I was in the box on Pennsylvania Avenue with Biden and Obama and their family. That was such a cool experience. But here's a fun story. George Bush, he was such a Texan. He was president, but he was so down to earth. One of the times I interacted with him, I was at a White House Christmas party and I was going to take my picture with him and he stuck his hand out and he said, "Thanks for coming." And and then another time when I was a White House intern, all the interns were gathered and got to meet George and George Bush. And I was able to ask him a question. So I asked him, and mind you, he was president of the United States at the time. And so I asked him, you're president, like you're arguably the most powerful human being in the world. And I'm curious for you though, like when you look back on your life and everything you've accomplished and everything you've done, what's the thing that you're most proud of, Mr. President? And he could have easily said, well, becoming president of the United States and the leader of the free world. That would have been the obvious answer. But what he said was so fascinating. He said, it's my daughters. It's creating two really good human beings
Yeah.
who stay out of trouble and do good in the world. And that is the legacy I'm most proud of. So I thought that was really cool.
I've got to ask you this because, like, you're in Washington, D.C. I'm over the other side of the pond. We kind of see, what a little bit. And in terms of cool, right? Still to this day, Obama seems to be on a whole different level. And I almost was defined by that moment, I think, when he went, "Oh, there's a flight. Got the thing." And it's like, oh, how cool was that? And what is he really like that?
Obama is cool. He's got swagger. I didn't have a ton of interactions with Obama. He was very business. He wasn't very interested in taking a lot of time to entertain staff. I did have a number of interactions with him though, and I've got a photo with him and everything. The most interaction I had with him. So he near the end of his first administration, maybe it was the beginning of his second term. I don't mean administration. He had 2 terms as president, and I was there for all of the first term and the very beginning of the second term. And I had decided that my passion was really in adult learning and training and development. And I was in the process of interviewing for another job and was pretty sure I was going to be leaving the executive office of the president. And I had yet to really have one-on-one interactions with Obama. And then like a month or two before I left, there were multiple buildings. Like the White House complex is not just the White House or the West Wing. It's got like, I think 3,000 people who work there at the executive office of the president and many components and many buildings. It's much bigger than you would think. The presidency is a big institution and a big job. So he came to my office building. He was walking around, finally like meeting the non-political civil servants in finance and HR and IT, which I was one of. And I knew he was coming. I remember going to do my hair and putting on some lipstick and getting ready and just waiting by my desk for the president to come by and say hi. And when he walked in my office, I had an emotional response because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm about to leave here. And I'm finally getting to interact with this man I've been supporting for over 4 years. Oh my God. Like I started tearing up and crying. And I remember saying to him, like, hello, it's so nice to meet you. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he was like, oh, don't cry. Don't cry, Angela. Like, are you okay? Like he was just very caring when he saw me having that emotional reaction. So that's a story I really think of when I think about President Obama and my personal interactions with him, is just how caring he was.
Yeah, yeah. Now, yeah, that's really interesting. And I know you met a lot of interesting people in the process. I am someone who's spent, as you know, many years not just collecting people in sort of amazing people in my network. I'm very pleased and proud of the people that I've got in my network, and also networks. I've got multiple networks led by people like you, and people like Scott McIntyre is a good friend of mine, who has led the crowdfunding professional association for many years, and so on. There's quite a few, but actually, one of the things I want to talk about in a moment or two is your network is pretty amazing, and it's particularly relevant because one of the objectives of the work that we're doing together within the MPI, the Modern Polymaths Institute, and in this new global impact quest is about global and impact. And it is a quest, in fact, but it's a quest to tackle some of those otherwise intractable problems, and to find and support and work with some of the people who and build a team around. We've already begun to do this, build teams around those people, and those often polymaths who have the potential to make that impact. So before we move on to the first of those, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, just your network is amazing. I don't know whether you feel comfortable naming names, perhaps not, but talk a little bit about it anyway.
Yeah, I've met so many cool people, for my time in the governor's office, my time at the University of Southern California, my time as a White House intern. Oh my God, the other White House interns, the White House fellows I became friends with, several of them have become governors and CEOs and celebrities. Also the polymathy stuff, like, of course, being in a doctoral program, I met cool people, but then all the polymathy stuff I've gotten, I'm friends with David Epstein, I'm friends with Scott Barry Kaufman. These are famous authors. I'm personal friends with Robert Root Bernstein, who I consider the forefather of historic polymathy studies anyway. Waqas Ahmed, like, there's many people in the polymathy studies space that I know. And I've met presidents
But the
and
also
rubbed
across,
elbows with them, so
yeah, sorry.
it's cool.
We got a bit of a delay, I think, but there's plenty of people. We don't have time to go into it in detail, but across business, across entrepreneurship, all sorts of different businesses.
Tons of polymaths find me.
Yeah.
I'll say that. There are the polymaths come to my group. They come to my channel. They want to meet me. They're amazing people too. So and by the way, I will say, as a quick side note, that I've also been interviewing and getting to know people in prison. So I have a really broad, versatile personal network. It's really allowed me to see what's going on planet Earth. I've been to 42 countries on 6 continents. My mother's an immigrant. I've had such a unique hodgepodge experience, kind of at a really cool level. And it's still happening, like with you and Mark. I'm so happy that my life turned out this way.
So yeah, absolutely. Mark Fisher. So I met Mark a few years ago when running a hackathon, a challenge and it was very much about fixing some of our big problems of exclusion, of financial exclusion. We set a pretty stiff challenge that was pretty hard going, from the Frontier Technologies Association, and Mark and his company won it by a country mile. I was a bit impressed, actually, and we've kind of became friends, and we've kind of remained friends, and ever since. And then over the last year or so, working with I, as you know, introduced him into the picture with the Yidinji sovereign government. And again, as you know, I'm a proud ambassador for the Yidinji nation as well. And that's been brilliant, a brilliant story that is ongoing and expanding. Can't get into too much details, but there's all sorts of really great and potentially world-changing things happening there. And then more recently, you've been meeting some of those folks as well, but and then you recently interviewed Mark, and Mark's one of the people who, well, I've talked for long enough. Over to you.
Yeah, let me just share with you some of my thoughts on what you said. So, um, part and before I talk about Mark, I kind of just want to set some context if that's okay with you.
Oh,
So, what I see happening in humanity, and I really do pay attention. Like, I no longer have a 9 to 5 job, and I have time to meet people, to talk to, from large swaths of humanity, whether it's like the immigrant Uber driver I'm talking to, the person in prison I'm interviewing, a celebrity I know who I'm chatting with, or the impact that working for presidents have had on me. Like, I've really looked at what's going on in the world. Plus, my online community, Polymath Place, and the YouTube channel. Like, I really am sort of trying to tune in to what's going on planet Earth, what's working well and what's not. And what I see is that we have a lot of institutions and structures and ways of doing things on the planet, which have benefited some at the expense of many others. And to me, I really feel strongly guided by my ethics and morals. I was raised by Depression era grandparents. And so I'm kind of a hybrid of like the old world where people used to take care of each other
yeah,
and care about their
yeah,
neighbors. That is kind of rare in modern society. And I carry those values with me. And so I care more about doing the right thing
yeah,
than doing things the way I've been told. And so what I see is that while humanity's in trouble, we've got some global humanitarian crisis. It's really a meta crisis, a crisis of crises. And if we don't use our intelligence and our collaborative powers to make a change, that we're going to be in real trouble. We might even extinct ourselves eventually if we don't figure out a different way. And because of the bad incentive structure, people are incentivized to keep things as the way they are because they make money from it. They have job security. They're people who are incentivized to the status quo. But the status quo is broken and harming people and potentially going to ruin our species and our planet, maybe. I mean, our planet would survive us. Do you want to say something there? Yeah, go
well,
ahead.
I'm concerned we might run out of time, so I'm going to bring you back
Okay, to Mark. Yes.
to someone who is a leader on a global basis by any standard.
Yes.
He's a leader in fintech, who is a leader and entrepreneur as well in AI as well as fintech, who is producing world-changing technology. And as I
Exactly.
say, you met recently. Tell me what.
Yeah. So I recorded a hour and 20-minute long video with Mark, and it was a really great discussion. I've also been on, I don't know, 3 or 4 meetings now where he was there, and I've gotten to learn about his vision for humanity. And my conclusion, I told him this personally, sort of, we weren't being recorded, and I told him, hey, I've met a lot of people. I'm an expert in polymathy studies, which is related to the study of genius. And based on what I've seen of Mark, what I've seen of his creations, his ideas, his experiences, I think he's one of the greatest genius level polymaths of our time. Because what he has done is he has deeply understood the broken, biased model where people would profit off of subjugated peoples. Like he has a good heart. He's had a hard childhood similar to me. I think we sort of bonded over that. And rather than participating in the broken system or just figuring out how he'll make do, he decided to try to fix these problems. He decided to try to fix global warming. He decided to try to fix poverty. He decided to fix how people get access to credit. And I really do believe if his vision came to fruition, we could relatively quickly make a heaven here on earth for everybody rather than the hell that we're headed towards. So I'm so glad he exists. I'm honored to know him. He's one of the most amazing polymaths I've ever seen. I can see why he would have won that competition, the fintech competition, because what he's envisioned could save humanity. That's
Yeah,
my opinion of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've met many, as you say, polymaths, many leaders. You've helped create many leaders in your role in creating federal leadership programs. And no,
Hmm.
no wonder you got the network we were talking about before. Mark's, as I say, a friend of mine. I'm pleased to be able to see his progress, and I hope to help as well. But he's the first, and we've
Hmm.
got some other really interesting, really potentially world-changing entrepreneurs. We can't talk about really much else today, but it's exciting, isn't it, Angela?
It's so exciting. For me, the power of polymathy has been something I believed in, I was convinced of, but the more and more I see people like Mark and people like you, how you think and the work you're doing, I believe in the power of polymathy even more to change us from what has felt like unsolvable, intractable global problems. I consider you and Mark global humanitarians. And it gives me great relief to know that there are people amongst us who are willing to acknowledge what's not working from the old model, understand it, deconstruct it, and re-envision a better future that's more humanitarian, that's better for everybody, not just those in power or those in privilege.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful more than ever because of polymath.
So I have a habit, absolutely. I have a habit of at the end of these conversations, um, of asking, whoever I'm talking to, if there's one thought they'd like to leave with folks, what that might be. But before I ask you that, um, yeah, it's, as I say, we're on opposite sides of the Atlantic. You're Washington DC. I'm in England. I'm sitting in Sheffield right now, and we don't get together we don't get together that often. I do remember those the days last summer when you weren't actually served by Jeeves, but you may well have been in the wonderful hotel there. I know you really enjoyed that, and that was a great time. But I'm looking forward to returning the call, and I'm looking forward. I think Mark and I are going to be with you and talking to some of those people in the network pretty soon. So I don't know whether the weather will be quite as good, but I'm looking forward to spending some time in Washington.
Yeah, and it's absolutely my pleasure to do whatever I can to see Mark's vision and yours come to fruition. I really think it will save humanity from self-destructing and
Yeah,
a lot of suffering.
I hope we can dig into those really intractable problems. Um, some of the things I've been working on, but
Hmm.
that's not for today. There remains that question: if there's one thing or one thought that you would like to leave to anyone
Yeah,
who's watching this, what could that be?
I think Mark is an inspiration and you both on how to be the best possible humans we can. And that involves not just caring about yourself. Until and unless we care about other people who are different from us in a different part of the world than us, different skin color, different languages, different culture, like until we really come together and start caring about global humanitarian issues, we're just gonna keep careening and unraveling our species, I think. See, tech is great, tech's doing great, but everything else has gone to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
And so my call to anyone listening to this or watching this is just do your part. Do the right thing. If something's not working, say it. And let's be honest. Let's just tell the truth. Let's not empower old systems that aren't working to keep not working for us and dragging us down. Let's tell the truth and come together the best we can and solve the problems of our time. We can do it. There are people amongst us who are genius level polymaths who can solve it. We just need to give them support.
And we're going to help to put the right resources, all the right resources, and the right people and the right teams around some of those people. That's the vision here. Angela, I guess we're pretty much out of time. So I would say thank you and I'll see you next time, but you know quite well we'll be talking probably later on today and tomorrow and
Every day.
working together and all this stuff. But thank you for those words. I didn't know quite what that you were going to say that. And I know you are always truthful and direct, so I doubly so.
Can I
So,
ask you one last, what's your final thought? What would you like to say?
oh gosh, I should be ready for that, shouldn't I, really? So,
What comes up?
so it's this. We have a world which has become sociopathic
Mm,
in its nature. We have a world where certain ideas, economic ideas, have taken over the world, and we are enslaving humanity rather than to markets and to money and to GDP, rather than having them serve humanity. And my vision, my the reason I do what I do, which has got something to do with, you know, climate change, global warming, carbon emissions as well, and that's a big part of it. But the reason I do is we urgently need to turn that around, and we can, but we need to work together to do it, and we need to understand, you know, how that happened over the last 50 years, because there's been a change over that time,
mhm.
recognizably, historically so. We kind of researched all this. It's a long answer to a short question, isn't it? But coming to a close, I believe we can do that, and I believe we must do that. So, yeah, come and join us. We'll be around, and we will be, you know, hopefully, helping people to find new ways to think, and ways to move us on from the captivity of that sociopathic framework that is damaging, well, it's damaging humanity, not just individual people, but that too. So you did ask.
Exactly. That's exactly what I think too. People, we were just talking about this the other day. The world really does have sociopathic and psychopathic systems in place. They're hurting us, and we've got to make a change.
Yeah, and we're you know, we're just making a start right now on some of this stuff. I'm delighted we're working together on Global Impact Quest, and I guess we'll be doing some more of these soon. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too, Barry.
Thanks, Angela. See you later.
All right. See you later. Bye.
Bye.